We are searchlights we can see in the dark. We are rockets pointing up at the stars. We are billions of beautiful hearts. And you sold us down the river too far. What about us? What about all the times you said you had the answers? What about us? What about all the broken happy ever afters? Oh, what about us? What about all the plans that ended in disasters? What about love? What about trust? What about us? We are problems that want to be solved. We are children that need to be loved. We were willing, we came when you called. Enough is enough. Oh, what about us? What about all the times you said you had the answers? What about us? What about all the broken happy ever afters? Oh, what about us? What about all the plans that ended in disaster? What about love? What about trust? What about us? Sticks and stones, they may break my bones, but then I'll be ready. Are you ready? It's the start of us waking up, come on. Are you ready? I'll be ready. I don't want control, I want to let go. Are you ready? I'll be ready. 'Cause now it's time to let them know we are ready. What about us? What about all the times you said you had the answers? What about us? What about all the broken happy ever after? Oh, what about us? What about all the plans that ended in disasters? What about love? What about trust? What about us? What about love? What about trust? What about us?
Well, hello and welcome to another Restore Live. Restore Live going out to the Restore channel, that's on Facebook, the British Unionist People's Voice on Facebook, also to the Restore channel on YouTube, and going out to the Twitter channel. Now, from the Facebook channels, if you would like to share this stream as far and as wide as you can. We can't rely on the social media platforms to share for us. and that's how we get our numbers. So again, if you would like to leave a message in the live chat, if you would like to make it known that you're here, if it's your first time here, if you would like to give us a love, give us a like, give us a share, tell us what it is that you think of our channel, because the algorithm or the algorithms, what it does is it makes use of them whenever people would be interacting on these type of streams. Now, we've entitled this stream Constitutional but Not Economic Unionist, and we've done that for a reason. I'm just going to pop myself down for a moment, and I want you to look at the background that's behind me, and I want you to try to understand the question which is behind my head whenever I pop myself down. So here we go. So the question is, spot the difference. You see pictures of Doug Beattie, you see a picture of Jeffrey Donaldson, and it says just above my head here, constitutional but not economic unionist. Now, it appeared to me today, I was just looking back at some of our old streams, and given that the information that we hold here at Restore UK from the years now of streaming that we've been doing, something really came to my mind, and something really stuck out, let's just say. And I began then looking at it. So I decided this evening to do this stream. Although that we had it planned that we would actually compare Jeffrey with Doug Beattie, and we would compare the two types of unionism, or is it the one type of unionism? But we would compare their unionism and their unionist leaderships respectively. And we would try to understand if any of those people in the picture at either side there, Doug Beattie, Jeffrey Donaldson, if any of those people are really, let's just say, fighters. Are they the type of people that are up off their knees? Are they the type of people that are working for unionism? Are they the type of people that would be working in a meaningful, proactive way, and in a way to defend, protect, and enhance Northern Ireland's place within the United Kingdom? So there's a real question for the people that have joined us on this stream this evening. And again, I just see the numbers going up from across the platforms there. And if you're new to the stream, what to do, please, if you would share it out far and wide. And if anybody could contact, or anybody sees our good friend Jim, if you would ask Jim, if you're there, would you also share this stream out far and wide? So what we're going to do is we're just going to get on with what it is that we have to do, and we're going to start now as we go. I think we have enough numbers here to get the stream going. So constitutional but not economic unionist. Now, where does that phraseology come from? Where does it come from? Who mentioned those words in the not too distant past? You see, Doug Beattie, the man who would have claimed that he put a landing zone in place, the man who would have claimed that he put a landing zone in place in 2019, the man who would have claimed that he sold this landing zone to the American government, he sold it to the Dublin government, he sold it to the EU, and he says that the British government are accepting of it. And this landing zone, what is the landing zone? Well, in a nutshell, the landing zone is what it is that you see happening right before your very eyes, contained within. Let's go back to the start, as you would. So Theresa May's backstop. Then it became Boris Johnson's oven-ready deal, and then it moved from Boris Johnson's oven-ready protocol deal. And as Professor John Tong would have said on this stream just a few days ago, that it is the Protocol Mark II, or the Protocol Mark II, aka the Windsor Framework, or is it the Windsor Framework, aka the Protocol Mark II, the other way around? So you see, this deal has been cooking for a very, very long time. In fact, if we listen to Doug Beattie, um, this landing zone that Doug Beattie talked about was that there would be, well, they say that there would be no checks on goods coming from England, Scotland, and Wales to Northern Ireland. There would be green lanes for goods, EU customs regulatory border checks with digital data supplied to the EU, without going through everything. That's what it meant. It meant that there was going to be green lanes for goods to be checked coming to Northern Ireland, dictated to by the EU, entering what is known as the EU single market. But how come, you say? Because the EU single market starts just across the Irish border. So how is it that the EU single market border checks are on the North Channel, the Irish Sea, between England, Scotland, and Wales and Northern Ireland? Well, that's because that the British government, just this year, they successfully argued that, well, where that you would see those checks, well, that now is the beginning of the EU single market. So that was the cat out of the bag, that between England, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland under Doug Beattie's landing zone was destined to be in the EU single market, destined to be separated from England, Scotland, and Wales. The people of Northern Ireland were destined to not have their Brexit referendum vote delivered upon. The people of Northern Ireland were destined to have their democracy removed. The people of Northern Ireland were destined to maybe not be second-class citizens, to be third, fourth, or fifth-class citizens under what it was that Doug Beattie proposed into place. Now, don't take my word for this, because Doug Beattie actually claimed this. And before the end of this stream, we'll play Doug Beattie telling you about him putting the landing zone in place. And it was actually Steve Aiken, I think it is, that we have saying here that Doug Beattie, they sold it to the Americans, the Dublin government, and the British government, and the EU themselves. So this landing zone has been doing the rounds from the late part of 2019. From my recollection, it was late November 2019 during COVID, where Doug Beattie, COVID only came around in 2020. He was back out again in America. It wasn't in December of 2020. So he proposed it in 2019, and he was out selling it whilst COVID was on in 2020. And I always questioned, the man that was all for the COVID lockdowns and whatnot, and his health minister, Robin Swan. Well, wasn't it funny that, they were taking a trip to America during these lockdowns? But anyway, that's by the by. So Doug Beattie would be the man who proposed into place. The Ulster Unionist Party are the people who proposed into place what you see now. What you see in front of your very eyes being this Windsor framework deal that is sitting and is going to be foisted upon British Unionists here in Northern Ireland. Now, let me explain something here. Doug Beattie then said that he was a constitutional unionist and he was not an economic unionist. Now, whenever it is that we look at this Windsor framework, whenever it is that we look at what the deal actually means, whenever it is that we understand that, well, didn't Ursula von der Leyen say that in the EU single market, the ECJ, the European Court of Justice, they're the final arbiter of any disputes within that market. In fact, they are the only arbiter of anything within the EU single market. Now, think about this. You are separated from England, Scotland, and Wales. You have the EU customs and regulatory checks on the Irish Sea at the North Channel, separating England, Scotland, and Wales to Northern Ireland. Effectively, under this deal, you are in the EU single market. You're not in the UK internal market. And in fact, whenever that we had broken this down and understood this deal fully, what this actually means is that the union is made up of two things. It's made up of the constitutional union. It's also made up of the economic union. And what this deal proposes is to give away the economic part of our union to the EU, to permit the EU to govern, and I'll use that word again, to govern the economic part of our union. So our union is being ripped down the middle, and half of it is being given to the EU, with Dublin say, let's just say. Now, we won the referendum in 2016. We took part in the democratic Brexit referendum, and those that would have been Brexiteers wanting to leave the EU, well, we won. But here we are, having had our democracy removed and having been separated from England, Scotland, and Wales, and having half of our union being ripped up and given to the EU, into the EU single market. I remember what it was that Doug Beattie was saying all that time ago. I remember Doug Beattie is the man who claims that he put in place this landing zone, which is effectively what is in this Windsor framework document. And Doug Beattie was saying way back then that he was a constitutional but not an economic unionist. Now I'm going to say this again, that the union is made up of two things. It's made up of the constitutional union. It's also made up of the economic union. And Doug Beattie had proposed into place what it is that you see in terms of what it is that's in this Windsor framework. So how was it that Doug Beattie was able to have a crystal ball? How was it that Doug Beattie was able to claim that he was a constitutional but not economic unionist? How was it that Doug Beattie would have known what it is that he needed to sell from a way, way, way back? I just think about that. Think about that. So who's Doug Beattie working for? Is Doug Beattie working for unionism here in Northern Ireland? Is Doug Beattie working for the EU? Is Doug Beattie working for the so-called, and I say the so-called, national interest? And whenever that we say the so-called national interest, I mean, we've got to look at things, and we've got to understand that right now, the so-called British government in Westminster, Rishi Sunak, Steve Baker, Chris Heaton Harris, that's just to name but a few. But those people are minded to hive us off into this landing zone, into this constitutional but not economic unionism. And make no mistake, that's exactly what they're about to do. Now, if we listen to Jim Allister, and I mentioned this the other evening when I was with Ben Habib, if we listen to Jim Allister from way, way back in 2019, Jim would have said on the Ulster Hall Rally for the Union stage on the 6th of December in 2019, when people turned out to get the DUP elected into Westminster, Jim Allister would have said on that stage, I still have the footage here, he would have said that it's a short step from economic unionism or economic union into full-blown constitutional union. So we've got to look at this, and we've got to try to anticipate where the trajectory of this constitutional but not economic unionism is going. I state that Doug Beattie was the man who claimed that he sold this to the EU, he sold this to the Americans, he sold this to the Dublin government. The British government were happy with it. We've seen that in the backstop, the oven-ready protocol deal, the Protocol Mark II Windsor Framework deal. It has just followed all the way through in where the EU law would govern trade here in Northern Ireland, which renders us having lost our economic part of the union here in Northern Ireland. So remember that phrase from Jim Allister. And I'm saying this for a reason, because we're going to take people on a little journey here, and we're going to show or we're going to ask a question. Is there any other constitutional but not economic unionists who are leading us right now? I'm going to remove my screen. I'm going to ask people yet again to read what it is that's behind me. Is Jeffrey Donaldson a constitutional but not economic unionist? Is Jeffrey Donaldson and the DUP hierarchy, are they happy with this settlement? Are they happy with this framework document? I listened to Jeffrey yesterday in America. You would have thought, that was the first time that he's actually stated it. It was the first time that the DUP had uttered it. Okay, we heard soundings from, I think, Sammy Wilson, from Ian Paisley Jr. We may have heard some soundings from Gregory Campbell, also, albeit that they weren't really strong enough in my honest opinion. But here's a question. Is there any difference between Doug Beattie and Jeffrey Donaldson? Are they full-blown unionists? Or is Doug Beattie a constitutional but not an economic unionist? And is Jeffrey Donaldson a full-blown unionist? That's the question. That is the real question. Let's first explore where that it is that terminology would have came from. A few months ago, I'll just say a few months ago because I'm not too sure of the date. Some months ago would be a better way to put this. We came across a document from the archives in the Irish Republic. And whenever that we began reading this document, well, it told, I'm going to say, a telling tale. And what I mean is that well, whenever that you would hear on your media today, you would hear, say, for example, in America, you would hear when Trump was in power, you would have heard Joe Biden's administration in the mainstream media and all of those people from the Democrat Party. You'd have heard where they all claimed that Trump, when he was getting elected, the Russians were working to get Trump elected. Now, they were claiming that was interfering in democracy, which it would have been, and that's a fact. That was interfering in America's democracy, and to interfere in a country's democracy, well, that's an act of aggression. That is the corrupting, the intentional corrupting of another country's democracy. That's what it is. That's, in my view, that is a blatant act of trying to destabilize a country, trying to manipulate a country. That's what it is. There's no other way of looking at this. In fact, some would say that it's an act of war to interfere in another country's democracy. Now, remembering that term, constitutional but not economic unionist, what I want to do is I want to go back to something that we done many months ago, in where we came across this document from the Irish government's archives that had been released after so many years, which told us that the Irish government, one of their subsidiaries, their military intelligence, G2 namely, what they were doing is that they were interfering in the elections here in Northern Ireland. What they were doing, that they were driving wedges between what they called the OUP, the official Unionist Party, which is Doug Beattie's party right now, the UUP, and the DUP, the Irish government, were driving wedges between those two parties. And the Irish government were, according to their own document in their own archives, their military intelligence was engaged in a process of trying to divide. Now listen very carefully. Listen very, very carefully. They were engaged in a process whereby that they could divide constitutional unionism from non-constitutional unionism. I'll say that again. The Irish government were involved in a process way back. The military intelligence people from within the Irish government that works through the Irish Department for Foreign Affairs, they were manipulating the outcomes of elections here in Northern Ireland, and they were also working to divide constitutional unionism from non-constitutional unionism. Now let me say this again. Doug Beattie would have claimed to be a constitutional but not an economic unionist. We ask the question, is Jeffrey Donaldson the same? Let's have a wee look at this document, and then we'll do some more on this, and we'll go forward, and we'll try to explore the reason for, let's say, for example, Doug Beattie's party becoming the type of party that would sell a border between Northern Ireland and England and Scotland and Wales, separating you and I and everyone else from our brothers and sisters in the rest of the United Kingdom. Why would the Ulster Unionist Party try to do that? Now, we have it in record that they claimed that they did do it, that they negotiated, they sold, they put together the proposal in where that you have ended up with green lanes for goods, with EU customs and regulatory checks, with digital data being supplied to the EU, with red lanes lane for goods, with that's goods coming to the EU, in where that a court told us in Belfast, I'm saying told us, told Edwin Poots, that where that you would read the Irish seaports, well, that should read that that is the entry point into the EU. And that's what a court decided here in Belfast. So the question is this: why would Doug Beattie, a constitutional but not an economic unionist, who, when you look at it in the round, what Doug Beattie was saying was that he believes in this backstop, this landing zone deal in where that we end up with a border, where that we end up in the EU single market. You see, that's what Doug Beattie was saying when he says that he's a constitutional but not an economic unionist. And he was working in cahoots with the Americans, with the EU, and with the Dublin government to orchestrate this. Let's go back to this document, and then what we're going to do is that we're going to ask the question once we read this. We'll ask the question before that we read this. Were the Irish government's G2, their military intelligence, were they successful in dividing constitutional unionism from non-constitutional unionism? And that's a real question. What you'll see in front of you is you'll see a little document here from the National Archives in the Irish Republic. Now, I'm bringing it up a wee bit closer so that I can read it. You can see that it was dated in 1986. It is 8 pages. I think it runs on to 9 with cover. It's from the Department of the Taoiseach, and there's a copyright on it. However, it has been released into the National Archives, and we are using it because it is of public interest here in Northern Ireland that the Irish government and their subsidiary G2, their military intelligence people, were actually dividing unionism. Were trying to separate constitutional unionism from let's read the document and let you hear exactly what it says. So at the top of this page, this is page 1, political development in Northern Ireland. The prospects for political development in the short term. Anyway, we're just going to go down through this document. We're going to go right down until the important parts as we see them. This is an analysis of what it was that they could do, what it was that they were proposing to do, what it was that they had hopes that they could achieve, so on and so forth. So we're going to stop here at number 5, page number 5. And we're going to look at prospects and tactics. We're going to look at on down a wee bit here, where I don't know why you can see my mouse or not, but if you can, I'm going to highlight this. I can't highlight it actually. Engineering of elections is what it says. I can't highlight it, unfortunately. So I'm just going to read from this portion here, engineering of elections. Possible measures which may be considered in the next few months include the engineering of elections. Now, this is a foreign state. This is the Irish Republic. This is the Irish Republic talking about Northern Ireland. This is the Irish government talking about their spooks engineering elections here in Northern Ireland. Given that unionists will not talk about devolved government, assembly elections are out of the question. The creation of any lesser type of central body with scrutiny powers only is likely to run into unionist opposition, since the body would only scrutinise items on which the conference would make determined efforts to resolve differences between the governments and probably nationalist opposition, since it would not involve power sharing and might prevent power sharing happening later. An alternative possibly would be to dissolve local authorities early. However, they have operated for less than 2 years. Last elections were held in May 1985. On the past experience, elections would require to move back into the political arena and a reduction of violence, but while the SDLP and Sinn Féin would fight it out in the nationalist side, the OUP, which is the UUP, and the DUP would either operate a pact on the basis of existing council membership or in the absence of a pact. And if the indications as to relative strengths above are accurate, the DUP would take vote seats from the UUP, thereby claiming a mandate for their hard line. It appears that the DUP in particular are considering resigning their council seats in protest against the agreement. If they persist in this, it would suggest confidence on their part and likely result in right. So encouraging a split between the DUP and the UUP. Well, it says the OUP, which is the terminology used for the Ulster Unionist Party. So they were talking about encouraging a split between the DUP and the OUP. So I want now to go on down to the bottom of the page to this last item here on the page, which is 4, which will say 1V on it. And it says, seeking to split constitutional unionism from non-constitutional unionism. I'm going to read that again. Seeking to split constitutional unionism from non-constitutional unionism. It goes on to cite figures and facts and how that it is that they were proposing doing this type of thing, but without boring people with the minutiae of what it is that's in this document. The headline, I think, says it all. Seeking to split constitutional unionism from non-constitutional unionism. Now, in this last page 8 here, trying to persuade the British opposition parties to reaffirm on the agreement in the event of their coming to power. The London Embassy keeps regular contact with members of the Labour, SDP, Alliance parties, and the SDLP also have links. These can continue to be cultivated with good effect, but the most useful event would be opinion and final poll results showing a clear majority for any of the British parties, none of whom would normally wish to abandon the agreement. So it's signed at the bottom here. It's from their Anglo-Irish division in September in 1986. But again, I wanted to draw your attention to seeking to split constitutional unionism from non-constitutional unionism. That was the Irish government. That's what the Irish government were doing here in 1986. And as I say, that's a foreign power. That was a foreign government. That was a foreign government making use of their equivalent to MI5, a thing called G2, to divide constitutional unionism from economic unionism. Now, in later years, that actually happened whenever the UUP went off on their own. And if you read into the detail of that document, well, you see what it did talk about, that the DUP and the UUP, well, they were at one in terms of after the Anglo-Irish Agreement. They were standing as one. They were making joint decisions. They were making really, joint protest against all the things that meant us much harm. But what the Irish government were trying to do was they were trying to cause a wedge, a divide, in where that, well, they said, well, they're both on the same page in terms of their beliefs, their history, their heritage, their culture, and every single thing that they believe in. They're both on the same page. So they needed to find a way of creating the circumstances in where that the DUP and the UUP were not at one in terms of standing up for Northern Ireland and Northern Ireland's place from within the United Kingdom. Now, make no mistake, that was the ultimate goal of the Irish government, was to break Northern Ireland away from the United Kingdom. In 1998, they obligated themselves to removing Articles 2 and 3 of the Republic's Constitution, which was said by Unionists to be an illegal claim over Northern Ireland, part of the United Kingdom. And the Irish government obligated themselves to removing their Articles 2 and 3 of the Irish Constitution. They had to put a referendum to the people, and they subsequently actually done that. But you see, that was in 1986 that we were reading from. But you see, that is a fact. That is a fact that the Irish government were trying to divide constitutional unionism from non-constitutional unionism. Now, I know that this stream says constitutional but not economic unionists, but I'm coming to that very, very soon. So what is a constitutional unionist and what is a non-constitutional unionist? Well, today that you would see that the people that would vote for the UUP, well, they would be widely known as very, very light on the Constitution. They spend more time these days standing up for woke things like, gay marriage. Kids can change their genders at the age of 2. I don't know what age it is, but I'm just quoting that's what these people normally stand up for. They stand up that you can call yourself a woman, but you can have a male, um, so that don't offend anyone. You can be a woman if you've got a penis. This is the sorts of things that people that vote for the UUP actually believe these days. They don't deal in objective truth. They don't deal in the reality that is sitting right in front of their faces. The Irish government were looking to divide constitutional unionism from non-constitutional unionism. And the question is this: did they do a good job? Have they done a good job? Have what the Irish government started in 1986 within that document, using their secret services to divide the DUP and the UUP, to create the circumstances in where that the parties didn't believe in the same things, have the Irish government actually done their job? Have the G2 secret services, their of the Irish Department for Foreign Affairs, have they successfully manipulated into place the circumstances in where that unionism is completely divided? And has that culminated in exactly where that it is that we are today? Now that's a question. That is a real question. You see, we have these what it was that was written straight out of their archives, and we have to conclude whenever that we look at the Ulster Unionist Party, we look at them and we think, well, are these people for real? Are these people? I remember Robin Swan a few years ago, and I remember there was a crowd called Pink News, Now, let me say this and state this very, very clearly before that we go on. We have absolutely nothing against people that are in same-sex relationships. They can do what they want. I mean, that's not my thing, but whatever that floats their boat, that's completely up to them. But you see, I remember looking at the UUP way back a few years ago, I'm going to say 2018 it was. It was probably around 2018, in where that there was this crowd called Pink News, and they were coming to Stormont, and they were wanting to have a bit of a shindig in Stormont, and they were wanting to invite the political parties to join them in this shindig. But there was a lot of questions over this group called Pink News. And what specifically stuck out for me was the fact that they would have been sexualizing children in their publications. They would have been indicating that the children were, for example, whenever they were talking about, was it Prince George, from my recollection, that he was a gay icon. I mean, this was only a child, a child. Let the child be a child. Let the child grow up. Let the child make his own decisions when he comes of age. Let's not exploit the children. Let's not try to turn the children into not something that they're not. Let's not try to label children as if that they are, well, they're this, they're that, or the other, to suit with somebody's ideology. And I can remember the request that was asked that would these political parties join them. And I remember the Ulster Unionist Party, well, absolutely no problem. Well, they went and they stood and they said that they wouldn't let anybody say anything wrong against Pink News. And this is me using words that would be maybe just weren't exactly said, but this is the general gist of what was going on. And I remember looking at the UUP back then and thinking, what they should add to the end of their title there would be UUP LGBTQ plus 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 plus, and let's not stop those pluses because that's what the UUP do. So you see, then there was a clear division. Whenever the UUP started to support all this stuff, there was a clear division between what it was that unionists actually stood up for. Let's go back into that Irish government document when it says that we would divide constitutional unionism from non-constitutional unionism. I can remember a day that I attended the gay parade in Belfast. In fact, I have a clip of it where, we were standing along the side street there beside the Belfast Telegraph, and there comes toddling along was the Ulster Unionist Party. And I can remember looking at the Ulster Unionist Party with their rainbow-coloured Union Jacks, fluttering them around in the wind. And and I was moved to such a point whereby that I walked out into the parade. I took a camera with me. There was another man that was filming me from the background. And I went straight to Doug Beattie. And I said to him, that is defiling the Union Jack, turning that into rainbow colours. That is the flag of your country. The UUP should be most tasked to keep that flag, to respect that flag, not to defile that flag or deface that flag, to keep that flag as it stands. And you know what he said to me? Doug Beattie said, well, if that's the case, football hooligans do it too. What about them? So I think really what he was saying was, well, if football hooligans can do it, the Ulster Unionist Party, the party of Carson, the party that should be most tasked to keep that flag as that flag is, well, they were turning it into a rainbow flag and using it for their own, I don't know, political advantage. Call it whatever you want. But that is a fact. That is a fact with reference to the Ulster Unionist Party. So you see, what I'm aiming at here is, and we're going to go some more once we do this, is that what was said in the Irish government documents in 1986 is that we need to divide the DUP from the UUP in that they don't believe in the same things anymore. Essentially, that's what it was saying. We need to divide constitutional unionism from non-constitutional unionism. Now the question, did G2, the military intelligence of the Irish government, did they do a good job on the UUP? That is a question. That is a real question. Whenever that you hear Doug Beattie saying nowadays that he's a constitutional but not economic unionist, whenever that you understand that, well, what did you call that guy that was in the Oireachtas? He calls himself a unionist, and yet, he's down there in their parliament, and he says that he wanted to bring the Oireachtas to Northern Ireland. That's what he said. And Doug Beattie brought him into the party and stood him up around, I don't know what area in Northern Ireland, but they stood him, I think, at the last assembly elections. Can't remember his name. Maybe somebody put his name up into the live chat for me. But you see, this is what the Ulster Unionist Party have become. The party of Carson. There was a report written just a few weeks ago, and this is a side note, from a man that was assessing the Ulster Unionist Party that they had brought in to do an audit on the Ulster Unionist Party. And basically what that man was saying was the Ulster Unionist Party is finished, and the last man out would be better just turning the lights off. He said that they're in disarray. And what really sticks out again, Ian Marshall, that's the man. Ian Marshall was the man in the south. Thank you very much for that, Claire. So you see, we then again, I'm going to emphasise that the guy that was doing the audit, he says that, well, the Ulster Unionist Party's finished. Now, let's go back for a second, and I'm doing this for a reason, because we're going to come to a culmination within this stream where I hope that people understand what it is that I'm driving at here, and I'm driving at it for a reason. So Doug Beattie is a constitutional but not economic unionist. We're asking the question, is Jeffrey Donaldson much of the same? And I'm also asking the question, did G2 Irish military intelligence have success with the UUP, turning them into this woke brigade, in where that the only thing which matters is woke? Some people say go woke, go broke. And let me explain something. From 2012, I think it was, Mike Nesbitt took over the party. That was the beginning of the end of the Ulster Unionist Party, in terms of their wokeness and supporting anything and everything when they don't see objective truth before their eyes, when they think that, and excuse this expression if people don't like bad language or don't like people talking like this, but they think that women can have male parts, let's just say. And that goes against the objective truth, which is there in front of them. But anyway, these people would argue that. But you see, they've tried this woke agenda from 2012, I think, and they have failed. Vote Colin, get Mike, or get Mike, vote Mike, get Colin. Vote the UUP, get the SDLP. Now, what is interesting with reference to that Irish government document that I just flipped up there, and I was reading from at the start, was that they were saying that they had the SDLP under control. This was the Irish establishment, and they were using the SDLP, and they were seeking to divide the UUP away from the DUP, and it seems as if it has worked. Then I thought about vote Mike, vote the UUP, and get the SDLP. Who is it that's talking to Mike? Who was talking to Mike whenever he decided on that strategy? Who was it that put that into his head? So we had Mike Nesbitt. Who did we have after that? Was it Robin Swan, who, as I explained earlier, was standing with Pink News? Then we had Steve Aiken, who would have been doing exactly the same thing. And now we have Doug Beattie. But where have they went electorally since that they've embarked on such a policy, dispensing with their unionism? What was it the Irish government said? Let's divide constitutional unionism from non-constitutional unionism. When the Ulster Unionist Party had put on the Alliance Party's clothes, non-constitutional unionism, what is it that's happened to them ever since that they've done that? And I'm speaking these words for a reason. As you see, I call it insanity politicized. I call it Einstein. Do the same thing over and over and over again and expect a different outcome. That is insanity, is what Einstein said. And I call what the Ulster Unionist Party are doing is insanity politicised. So why are they doing it? Why are they defeating themselves electorally? Why are they running themselves into the ground electorally? Why are they doing this? Is it because that they want to remain different from the DUP? Or do the DUP want to be now moving to the same ground in which that has absolutely defeated the UUP? Do the DUP now want to move that way because there's signs of the DUP actually doing this? What I want to do now, and we were focusing on the Irish government, the Irish Department for Foreign Affairs, their subsidiary, G2, their military intelligence, in where that they were dividing unionism. They embarked upon a strategy to divide constitutional unionism from non-constitutional unionism. And the question is has that actually worked? Whenever we hear Doug Beattie saying that he's a constitutional, but he's not an economic unionist. In other words, that he's okay being in the EU single market, splitting apart the union is in two parts. I'm going to say that again. The economic union, the political union. So Doug Beattie is looking to split apart the political union from the economic union and give the economic union to the EU. Does that make Doug Beattie a constitutional or a non-constitutional unionist? Is he giving himself a good title when he says that he's a constitutional unionist, or is he not really describing himself in the way that he should? Let me play something else here that I came across. Now, I want you to listen to Micheál Martin just last year, whenever he was talking about this shared island approach. And remember those words, shared island approach. Here we go.
The Shared Island Initiative, which I established, is the first time in our history where there's a sustained investment to support vital North-South projects to build deeper connections and understanding. Projects that have been talked about for decades are now underway. The Narrowwater Bridge will finally be delivered. We have provided the funding, engaged with local communities, and will move forward with what is both a very practical connection across the border, but also a powerful symbol of our future. So too is our investment in the Ulster Canal, a project which reopens and makes accessible a resource to support social and economic development.
So if you listen to Micheál Martin when he's talking about his shared island initiative and how that it is that they're putting in the infrastructure to link up Northern Ireland with the Republic of Ireland. I'm on record as having said before that, you know, some of those projects are good projects. But whenever that you are being aggressed against by a foreign power who wants to see you separated from the rest of the United Kingdom, whenever these people are dividing unionism, whenever these people are dividing constitutional unionists, and they're making them not non-constitutional unionists, whenever you see all this happening in front of your face, now let me again make this very clear. I would be known as the type of person, pre these people, starting in 2016 after the Brexit process, to try to remove my place from within the United Kingdom. I would have been known as the type of person that would be, I would have been quite accepting of the Irish Republic. You know, I would have liked the history, the heritage, the culture, the Guinness, the nightlife, everything that goes with it. I loved from Sligo down to Dingle Bay, to Killarney and back up the other way again. I liked the Irish Republic, or I liked the Irish Republic. I liked the people down there. I like all of that. But whenever these people are engaged in an act of aggression against me, slowly but surely they are turning me against them and all that it is that they stand for. Now, is this shared island initiative, is this a good thing? Well, the Ulster Canal, to me, would have been a really good thing. I mean, I've been involved in boating going back a number of years, and I would have really have loved to participate in going up and down the Ulster Canal if it was opened up again. But you see, these people aren't opening these things on a shared island initiative. They're not opening them for the benefit of the people here in Northern Ireland. What they're doing is that they're creating greater links between Northern Ireland and the Republic of Ireland, whether it be electricity, whether it be, well, let's just, Narrowwater Bridge is another one there, but let's just listen to them.
We've put in place funding for a wide range of other vital cross-border infrastructure, making sure that profound challenges like meeting the climate, biodiversity and energy security crises are tackled together. An all-island network to support the transition to electric vehicles is being developed. An all-island strategy for developing rail services will very shortly be completed. And we're also investing in an all-island approach to achieving breakthroughs in cancer treatment and a range of other key research challenges. We are determined to show a new and prosperous way forward for all communities. The most inclusive dialogue ever between communities is also taking place. Over 2,000 people have contributed to the dialogues so far, with a real diversity of contributions. It's not about looking for easy answers. It's about trying to have a real engagement which promotes concrete action. And one of the great failings of the last 25 years is that very little work was done about doing the hard work of studying the differences, similarities and opportunities in practical but fundamental areas. There's been no shortage of people willing to make grand claims about services, but it is remarkable how little has been done to actually quantify what the current situation is on both sides of the border.
So let's just remove that. I think you get the picture. An all-Ireland initiative to basically the infrastructure is in place, has been put in place, and the infrastructure has been worked at with people from the Ulster Unionist Party, constitutional but not economic unionist Doug Beattie. Were the UUP turned into constitutional, or were they divided from the DUP at one point in where they were constitutional, they were non-constitutional, and the DUP were constitutional unionists? There's a lot of questions to be asked here. Would you believe it that the infrastructure is already there for Doug Beattie's landing zone to occur? Doug Beattie has suggested, has glorified in the fact that he put this in place in 2019. We do know that he's very, very friendly with the people in the Irish government. We do know that he would be happy tomorrow to go into a 32-county socialist republic. We do know that because of his socialism, because of his woke agenda, because that, well, I question whether he's a constitutional unionist at all. I question whether it was and is that the Ulster Unionist Party have actually been manipulated by the Irish G2 way back whenever they said that they were doing it. And I question, did he do a good job on the Ulster Unionist Party? So I'm just going to remove that now from our little list, and we're going to go on. We're not finished yet. I do this for a reason. I do this for a reason because I'm going to pop this down again, and I'm going to ask people to look at the question which is behind. Spot the difference. Spot the difference between Jeffrey Donaldson and Doug Beattie. Is one a great leader? Would one fight tooth and nail for unionism here in Northern Ireland? Are they both up off their knees, fighting meaningfully, proactively, and in a way that would defend, protect, and enhance Northern Ireland's place within the United Kingdom? Are they leaders that you can trust? You can switch off, you can forget about them, you can go about your ordinary business knowing that your place in the union will be safe because they will never back down. Is that the type of leaders that you have in Doug Beattie and in Jeffrey Donaldson? Or are they both constitutional but not economic unionists? Are they minded to roll to this globalization? It's happening right before your very eyes. Make no mistake, Doug Beattie's landing zone is a strategy in where that it was always designed to separate Northern Ireland from the rest of the United Kingdom. That it was always designed in that when Northern Ireland got their full and final settlement, half in the EU, half out of the EU, well, Scotland would demand the same. Wales would demand the same. It was always designed in that way. It was always designed to break up the Union. Now, there are two outcomes of this. Will the British government decide to, well, this is a mess, let's reverse Brexit and we're all back in the EU and everything go back to where it was? Will they do that? Or will the EU be greedy? Will the Republicans be greedy? Will the Irish government be greedy? And will they go for what it is? Will the Americans be greedy? And will they go for what it was that they were after in the first place? Let's remind ourselves of who that it is that they're out in America with smiles on their face with. I seen Jeffrey Donaldson, Emma Pengelly, and I'm not even too sure the other man's name. He's insignificant to me, that guy. But there's somebody else that was with Jeffrey and Emma yesterday. I'm not too sure of his name. But I seen him with big smiles, big Cheshire cats, and it was reminiscent of Peter Robinson whenever he was standing beside Bill Clinton with his love hearts going out, starstruck. Yes, sir, no, sir, 3 bags full, sir. I will do anything for you, sir. And that's where wee Jeffrey is right now. Gordon Lance. That's the man. I knew the name, but I wasn't going to tax my brain too much to know it. Thanks very much for that, Lillian. So I see them out smiling in America at the minute. And I hear Jeffrey actually saying something. Now, we're going to come to that in a moment. Don't go anywhere yet. We're by no means finished this stream. So let's remind ourselves first and foremost of who these Americans are, whose side these Americans are on, and what it is that these Americans actually want.
Brexit is the divorce is final. So if you might ask how I spend my time, Liam Fox came by, who was one of the leading Brexiteers, and after Bombardier, he is second in charge. And I said to him, is there any prospect of revisiting this vote, given the fact that polling now says if they were to revisit it, they would not leave?
That's who the Americans are. And it doesn't matter which party in America that you get. You see, they're Irish Americans. Richie Needler, he is, well, he's friendly with Gerry Adams. Martin McGuinness, he used to be friendly with. He's a Republican. He's a Republican sympathizer. That's who Richie Neal is. Richie Neal, Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi. All sides of the same cloth, the same side and the one cloth, whatever way you want to look at it. They are Irish American. In the 1990s, whenever the peace process was in its fruition, I can remember a bomb that happened in 1993 here in Belfast. It was known as the Shankill bomb. And you know, then there was another bomb that happened, I think it was in 1995, and that was the Oklahoma bomb, and that was in America. And I remember Bill Clinton being here in 1995, November 1995, telling people here that blessed be the peacemakers, that you have to put your past behind you, you have to reach out to the other community, you have to make friends with the people that were, you know, once enemies, blowing each other up, blowing people up. You have to make friends with the Shankill bomber. And I remember thinking, with reference Bill Clinton, he goes back into America and he said that the person that, or the people, the perpetrators that would have carried out that Oklahoma bomb, we will leave no stone unturned until we find them. And they did find one Timothy McVeigh, and they put Timothy McVeigh to death by lethal injection. And I remember looking at that and thinking that these Americans are here telling you that you need to put the past behind you. You need to make friends with your Sean Kellys of this world, who would have been one of the people that planted the Shankill bomb. I remember thinking, and I wrote a piece, when is a terrorist act an act of terrorism? Well, when it's in Northern Ireland, when it's on the Shankill Road, it's not an act of terrorism. When it's in America, it is an act of terrorism. And you see, the Americans don't change. They have never changed. They're not on the side of unionism. They're not on the side of Protestantism, unionism, or loyalism. They may bring people out there to put them on the world stage to make them feel important. But, you know, as in that old chant by the American Marines, we coaxed them in with a piece of bread and then we squashed their poor little heads. Words to that effect. I mean, that's what the Americans are. That's what the Americans are doing. The Americans are not on your side. They're not on unionism's side. So anyone that wants to think that America would do anything for us, they are fooling themselves. Absolutely fooling themselves. Let's have another little clip from Richie Neal.
And be found to those difficulties around the protocol with the view to getting power sharing back up and running at Stormont?
For sure. And I think that there was an election, and a campaign is part of forming a government. So the parties are obligated to play through what they said they would do during the election season, and that is to sit in government and argue some days just about the mundane challenges of public life.
What do you see the biggest threat is right now?
Well, I think there's an intransigence that has settled in on the part of the UK. Whether or not that's a bargaining posture, we'll all have to wait and see.
Now, you've been saying for some time now that if there's any threat to peace and stability on this island, there won't be any US-UK trade deal signed off on. Why do you think it is that you have to keep repeating that message?
Well, let me use this occasion to reaffirm it. We think that a trade agreement with the UK is desirable. However, the Good Friday Agreement belongs to America, too. We were honest brokers along the way, accepting the notion that we would find space for the planter and the Gale to live together. And I think that all that we put into the Good Friday Agreement also means that we should ensure its outcome. And the trade agreement is out there for everybody to witness if the Good Friday Agreement is not disturbed.
And listen to Richie Neal there, Bill Clinton's friend, Nancy Pelosi's friend, Joe Biden's friend, Irish Republican Richie Neal, Jerry Adams's friend, friends of the IRA. That's who Richie Neal is. And is that a threat? Well, it looks like a threat to me, that if the British government do not subjugate unionists here in Northern Ireland, if they do not separate unionism here in Northern Ireland from the rest of the United Kingdom, well, then there would be no trade deal. Didn't Obama come during the Brexit campaign and say that we were being put to the back of the queue? There would be no trade deal. And you know, the stupidness of this man is saying that he wants to protect the Belfast Agreement. And what he really means is that he wants to protect it for Republicans. He doesn't want to protect it for unionism, because what unionism found as a result of the constitutional change which is happening right now in Northern Ireland, in the United Kingdom, as a result of that constitutional change, well, there was no referendum put to the people as per Article 1, the Northern Ireland Act 1998. And when we reach for those safeguards that's contained within that Belfast Agreement, what we find is that the principle of consent, the union is safe, You know, that's what we were being told in 1994 going forward, and all sorts of government papers that were passed around. And I have access to some of them, and I read many of them. It told us that the constitutional position of Northern Ireland's place within the United Kingdom was safe. But yet, whenever we reach for the constitutional guarantees contained within that agreement, we find that it doesn't work for us. We find throughout the judicial review, the appeal to the judicial review, then on to the Supreme Court, and we find that the British government can change the rules, which they did. They changed the Northern Ireland Act 1998 to facilitate the foisting of a protocol upon the people of Northern Ireland, which ultimately would translate in Northern Ireland being separated from the United Kingdom, albeit on an economic basis right now. So he wants to protect the Belfast Agreement, but not for Unionists. He wants to protect the Belfast Agreement for Republicans and Republicans only. I play this for a reason, people. I play all of this for a reason. I have to say, as a unionist, I'm highly annoyed at the way things have transpired, at the way that your Doug Beatties of this world would be economic but not constitutional. What is it? He's constitutional but not economic unionist, which was forfeiting the economic unionism to the EU. And Doug Beattie said that a very, very long time ago. You know, I'm annoyed that the DUP would write their 7 tests on a thing called constructive ambiguity, the same type of language that the Belfast Agreement was written in, and they wrote it for the full unionism here in Northern Ireland. That's what they did. Make no mistake. That's what they did. And we have the proof from a professor of politics last week who agreed with me. And we talked to a good friend of Northern Ireland just a few days ago, Ben Habib, who also agrees with our analysis here at Restore. In fact, how could they not agree with it? Because it was delivered to us in the Supreme Court that the British government can remove you if they want, because Parliament is sovereign, from the United Kingdom, albeit on this occasion in terms of your economic union. You don't have that anymore. It's been placed into the EU single market with full governance given to the EU and with arbitration given to the ECJ, the European Court of Justice. So Richie Neal here is saying we need to protect the agreement, but not for unionists. I don't hear the Americans shouting right now because unionism is being separated from the rest of the United Kingdom. I hear them all saying this is an opportunity. This is a way in which this country could flourish. You see, we don't shout without having solutions. There are solutions that could satisfy everyone, but that doesn't seem to be the solutions that the Americans want. It doesn't seem to be the solutions that Doug Beattie in the UUP and his conglomerate want. And if I'm right, it also doesn't seem to be the solutions that Jeffrey Donaldson and his conglomerate at the DUP hierarchy are willing to accept. And we're coming to that very shortly. So let's play on with Richie Neal before that it is that we bring this to a close. That's Richie Neal over. That's Richie Neal at a close. Sorry, I didn't think that that was at an end. So you see, that's the Americans for you. That's the Americans. So we can't trust the Americans. We've learned that we can't trust the Dublin government because they've been dividing this country. They've been manipulating our politics. They've been engineering the outcome of our elections. They have been using their secret services, G2, military intelligence, to divide constitutional unionism from non-constitutional unionism. They have been busy setting up a shared island infrastructure. And you heard that from Micheál Martin there just earlier. They've been busy putting in place this so-called New Ireland. I want to remind people before that I move on to coming to a close on this stream, and we're going to go on to Jeffrey Donaldson in a moment. I want to remind people, and I've done this several times, I just want to remind people of what the promises were that Jeffrey Donaldson gave to the Unionist people, what his only mandate is. So here we go.
To stand together, united in our determination that the protocol must go and our democratic rights as British citizens should be fully restored.
So that's Jeffrey Donaldson's only mandate. The protocol must go. That was before the election. That was before the assembly elections. And the democratic rights, now granted, he said should be fully restored. I would have said must be fully restored. But then you see, you've got to listen to their words. You've got to listen to their words. Before I go on here, what I want to do, we're going to have to fight these people. We really are. And I'm going to show you why it is that we're going to need to fight them. And make no mistake, we Jeffrey, whilst you would have heard him talking very well in Washington, we Jeffrey has already indicated to people, and I broke this a couple of weeks ago, within our community, and I've had it now about 5 times from about 5 different sources who are in the know within the group of people that he talked to. I've had it from a lot of people right now that Jeffrey has said that let me do something first and we'll come back and we'll talk about it. And I'm going to ask the question again about Jeffrey. Constitutional but not economic unionists. Are Doug Beattie and Jeffrey the same? And I'll come to the conclusion in a moment. And I'll tell you why I'm saying this. People, it's coming to the time again. And as you know, we've been away for a while. We'll need to build our platform again. It seems that Facebook has absolutely decimated us. Right across the platforms, there's not an awful lot of people watching, but however, over time we do get people that comes to watch what it is that we're doing. So we'll aim to build our platforms again. I don't know whether it's possible or not because we're arguing against what it is that the government are trying to force into place, the British government, what it is that the Americans are trying to force into place, what it is that Doug Beattie is trying to force into place, what it is that the DUP hierarchy are minded to force into place, what it is that the EU are dictating that must be forced into place. You see, when we're fighting against that, they will do everything in their power to stop us from persuading people that this is exactly what they're doing. And I think we do a good job in persuading people. So I'm going to ask if that you can help with their work. There's a PayPal link. It's on Restore UK. They're on Facebook. It's on the British Unionist People's Voice on Facebook. That's the Facebook channel. I got that wrong. Restore UK on Facebook and Restore UK on YouTube. And if you can help with our work, click on that link. Give us a few pounds. We're going to need the upper game. We're going to need to get banners. We're going to need to plan to protest against our own politicians. And I've always believed that it would actually come to this. I've always believed that we're going to have to stand against our own. And I can remember, something that Jack Ross from Turning Point UK would have given me a few years ago. And it came from the Americans. It came from Turning Point USA. And it was about the Navajo tribe and how that it was that the American government stole their land, and how that it was that the American government literally manipulated their leaders, how that it was that the American government bought their leaders, purchased their leaders, and turned their leaders to the point whereby that their leaders were leading the Indians off the reservation for the American government to take. I kid you not, that's what the Americans actually did. And I can always recall thinking that Northern Ireland was a test ground, the peace process, the George Mitchell Institute for Global Peace, which is out and about around the world trying to cause global peace in different places. We Jeffrey's a persuader for this peace for and on behalf of the George Mitchell Institute stroke the establishment. Jeffrey's millions of jobs. Like, I couldn't even start to follow the amount of establishment jobs that Jeffrey has. But anyway, we're going to need to highlight what it is that they're doing. And we're going to maybe need to be outside their offices if that's what needs to be done. We're going to have to engage with people who do love this union, who do want Northern Ireland to, prosper, to continue within the United Kingdom, and do want to tell these politicians not in our name. So if you can help us pop a few pound into that link, and as you know, we will literally lead the charge in this with others. So again, so that was Jeffrey's. This is his only mandate is the protocol must go. That was before the election, and the democratic rights of the people should be fully restored. And let's play on for a second and let's learn what it was that he said after the election. And you know that we pointed out that Jeffrey's words was changing the minute he got your assembly election vote. And I believe that the DUP are about to do exactly the same thing again. So watch and watch carefully. The protocol must go whilst on the protocol rally stages. Now watch.
Thank you.
I want to be clear to the House that this is not about scrapping the protocol. Our aim is to deliver on the protocol's objectives.
The statement today is a welcome, if overdue, step. That is a significant move towards addressing the problems created by the protocol and getting power sharing based upon a cross-community consensus up and running again.
The protocol must go. The democratic right of the people must be fully restored. Our aim is not to scrap the protocol, is what Liz Truss said. Jeffrey says, suitable. Thank you very much. That forms the basis by which that we could get the power sharing. It's a welcome statement. It forms the basis of us getting the assembly up and running again. The only thing that went against Jeffrey there was the tide of public opinion from within unionism. The 65 or 66,000 votes that the TUV mustered in the assembly elections. That's the only thing that the DUP and Jeffrey Donaldson understands. That's the only thing that they understand. So let's play on for a second. Let's hear the rest.
Our aim is to deliver on the protocol's objectives. That this is not about scrapping the protocol.
So you see, there's the DUP for you. There was Jeffrey. He swindled the electorate's vote. He said that the protocol must go. Liz Truss says that the protocol, where it's about delivering the protocol's objectives, and Jeffrey says that forms the basis by which that we could go back into the assembly. Anyway, cut a long story short, the 65,000 strong people who are 66,000 people who stood against the DUP and went to the TUV. That's what minded Jeffrey that he just wasn't in the position to shaft the unionist electorate there and then. So you see, there's Jeffrey. That's wee Jeffrey for you. So again, I'm going to ask the question, and we're now going to move to close the screen, but we've something more to go through before that we finish. So here we go again, taking me down to ask the question. Doug Beattie is a constitutional but not an economic unionist. Doug Beattie put the landing zone in place. Doug Beattie put the separation of the United Kingdom in place. Doug Beattie promoted, designed, sold to the Americans. The Dublin government sold to the EU the prospect of green lanes, red lanes, customs and regulatory checks, Northern Ireland's place within the United Kingdom being union made up of two pieces, political, economic. Let's give the economic to the EU. Let's give the political, albeit for temporary, to the UK. That's what Doug Beattie designed and put in place according to his very own words. Doug Beattie said that he was a constitutional, he was not an economic unionist. Is Jeffrey Donaldson much of the same? That's a real question. Have a look at what is written behind me when I take myself down, and then we'll go on and we'll move on and we'll listen to Jeffrey in Washington, and we'll pick apart his words as he says them. What I want to do, you got to excuse me, I've got to look under my camera there. Right, okay. So what I want to do here is I want to share my screen. I didn't have time to clip this here, so credit to what was on the Nolan show this morning. And we're playing this for the purpose of picking it apart. And I'm going to make that very, very clear. And the credit is to the Nolan show this morning for having played what it was that Jeffrey had said. So here we go.
So Ian Paisley called it weeks ago. Nigel Dodds was expressing concerns weeks ago. Sammy Wilson was saying Windsor Framework, no. And then finally seems that Sir Jeffrey Donaldson has decided no too. He's issued a letter from America on the annual St. Patrick's Day visit. And he says the Windsor Framework, no.
Primarily, if you look at our 7 tests, the key question for us is, do these arrangements respect our place within the United Kingdom? Do they remedy the harm that was done to Article 6 of the Act of Union under economic rights within the United Kingdom? We don't believe this framework goes far enough, and therefore we need to see in legislation, in UK law, clear remedial action to repair the harm done to the Act of Union.
So that's the first time we've heard Jeffrey coming out against this Windsor Framework. Why do I believe that he's coming out now? Remember, the DUP 7 tests were written in a thing called constructive ambiguity. They were written in a very weak way. They were written in a way that Professor John Tong would have said to me. He agreed. He agreed that they were written in a way that doesn't really mean what they say. So why is Jeffrey coming out and talking tough now whilst he's in America? Why is he doing the tough talk now? Why is he doing the tough talk now whenever that we know that he's been consulting with people before that he went to America, and he tells the people, and I'll lay it out bare here, is that, are you ready for it? And I've told this a few weeks ago, that he's going back to Stormont. He's in no rush to go back to Stormont. He is chasing the liberal, soft unionist vote, the same sort of vote that the Alliance Party are chasing, and the Ulster Unionist Party are chasing. And didn't we learn that insanity politicized meant that, well, Doug Beattie, well, they haven't succeeded in 4 goes at trying to court that vote. So Jeffrey Donaldson, we do know that he's going back to Stormont, and he's going back to Stormont, and he will go back to Stormont after the council elections. It might not be right away, but you see, there's a pattern. The pattern is that he's trying to swindle the unionist vote. That's why he's talking tough in America yesterday. He's trying to make you believe that he's standing up for something in which he is not. But let's listen to his words. Let's listen to these words, and let's see how strong that these words really are.
Secondly, in relation to the commitment made by the UK government in the New Decade New Approach Agreement, that was to protect Northern Ireland's place within the UK internal market. We want to see clear action taken on that. That is outstanding business. That commitment is not yet delivered. And whilst real progress has been made with this Windsor Framework, we want to see in UK law clear protection for Northern Ireland's place within the internal market of the United Kingdom. Thirdly, we have ongoing concerns about the continued application of EU law in Northern Ireland without consent. We recognise that where businesses in Northern Ireland want to trade across the border, want to trade into the single market of the European Union, we must follow EU rules for that purpose. But out of £77 billion worth of goods manufactured in Northern Ireland each year, 65 billion are sold within the United Kingdom, and we need clarity from the government as to what laws those businesses trade under, and of course that the application of EU law does not inhibit our ability to trade within the United Kingdom and its internal market.
So we need clarity from the British government as to which law the trade from within the United Kingdom is under. We know right now that the British government is minded to hive us off. They Boris Johnson's Theresa May's backstop, Boris Johnson's oven-ready protocol deal. Professor John Tong from the University of Liverpool said on this screen last week that the Windsor Framework is the Protocol Mark II. You know, we know all of that. We know what that means. What that means, Ursula von der Leyen, she said that inside the EU single market. We know what the British government solicitors were arguing in court cases, that the Act of the Union has been disapplied, which provides for your rights as British citizens around the United Kingdom, which provides for the unfettered access of trade from around the United Kingdom. That was disapplied in order that the protocol could be put in place. This is what they were arguing in the court when we were sitting in the court. This was the British government solicitors. We know what the trajectory of the British government is. I was talking to a man today from England who had said to me, you know, whenever I was talking about my gripes, and you know, I'm angry, I'm highly annoyed that these people that would call themselves conservative and unionists would actually do that to unionists in Northern Ireland. That these people that would call themselves the Ulster Unionist Party would actually facilitate this. That these people would call themselves the Democratic Unionist Party would actually draw tests which were drawn in constructive ambiguity to provide for the circumstances in where that this could happen. And you make no mistake, that's what they were doing. That's what they were doing. And we, Jeffrey, now, listen to what his requirement is. Listen to what his requirement is. His requirement is that they need clarification from the British government that whose laws does trade in the United Kingdom go by. Well, let me get you another wee clip here. Look, I don't even think that we need to listen to the rest of this here, but anyway, they were very weak words from Jeffrey. They really were. Very weak words. And I'm going to go for a little clip that we created last night, and this just really is going to, I'm going to say, this is going to copper fasten exactly what it is that I've been saying throughout this stream, that are these two people the same? Are they constitutional but not economic unionists? Are they working in the so-called national interest? Are they working for the national interest? And it just so happens that the national interest from Whitehall isn't the same interest of the people in the United Kingdom. You know, and the man that I was talking to today, he says that those people are not unionists. Those people are charlatans. Those people are crooks. Those people should not be in power. Those people, don't fall out with the United Kingdom. Fall out with those people, because those people are crooks. You know, are these two people the same? And I'm going to ask that. So looking for a little clip, and I want you to listen very carefully. And this is a very short clip from a stream that myself and Ben Habib had just a few days ago, in where that have incorporated a small sound bite from Professor John Tong. Just bear with me as I look for this. That many clicks, you see, you got to excuse me. Here we go.
I learned long ago to read the EU's documents rather than our own government's documents if I want to really find out what's going on. The EU have no option but to actually tell it as it is, because they've got 27 EU member states to which they have to report, and they can't put stuff out which is subterfuge for their 27 states. The British government is in a habitual process of hoodwinking the electorate.
The UK government's spin on the deal, it reads remarkably differently from the document that was issued by the European Union and its interpretation of the deal.
So the British government reads remarkably different from the EU's interpretation of the deal that was created. You see, the Sunak oil salesman, as I would have suggested that he was, you know, that's all it is. He's trying to spin, to swindle. He's trying to sell you something that it's not. You hear Ben, don't read the British government's documents. He learned a long time ago to read the EU's documents as opposed to the British government's documents, because you'll get a representation of what it was that they have agreed. You know, it's pitiful to look at these people, and they're meant to be your government. They're meant to be serving and protecting you, and this is what they're doing to the entire United Kingdom. You know, let's play on here. Let's just listen to John.
The UK government's spin on the deal, it reads remarkably differently from the document that was issued by the European Union and its interpretation of the deal. And, you know, Rishi Sunak has been spinning the Sunak oil salesman, as one loyalist described it to me earlier this evening. Compare that to the EU's document, and you think, have they signed the same deal here?
They've done it with the Windsor Framework. They're doing it now with this illegal migration bill, which doesn't work either. They do it with their claim that they wish to cut taxes. They don't. You know, they say everything they need to say in order to play the 24-hour news cycle to try and get whatever their political agenda is over the line. The British government hold the electorate in contempt. And when they put out documents on the Windsor Framework, far from actually describing accurately what's going on, what they're doing is putting out their political interpretation, what they would like to foist as their political interpretation on the Windsor Framework. So if you really want to understand what the Windsor Framework is about, don't read anything put out by His Majesty's government. Go to the EU website and read it.
So the ECJ will have the final say on EU law and single market issues?
So the EU, the ECJ, European Court of Justice, will have the final say on single market and European issues. Remember, we're in the EU single market under this deal. So who has the final say? The ECJ. So there's Jeffrey Donaldson actually looking for clarification on who has the say on the trade within Northern Ireland. The fact is that it was successfully argued in a court that right now at Larne, Belfast and Warrenpoint is the separating barrier between England, Scotland, Wales and Northern Ireland, and that should be viewed as the EU frontier, is what the courts, what was argued in the courts by the British government's solicitors acting on behalf of them. So I don't know why Jeffrey Donaldson needs clarification. It's there in front of his face. Like you see, as I say, it's only tough man talk, and it's only designed to get them beyond the next the council elections, in where that they want to swindle the people's vote yet again, and then they will shaft you. Then, like they've consistently done in the past, they will shaft you again and again and again and again. And I'm not willing I'm not prepared to play this game any longer. You know, I'm prepared to make a stand against these people, and a stand in a legal way, And that's why I'm asking that if people can help with us for what it is that we want to do, please do. Please look into the live chat there and contribute to a little fighting fund, and where that we might get some banners and whatnot to put up around Northern Ireland, showing people winning the hearts and minds and telling the people what it is that the DUP are prepared to do right now. So again, Ursula von der Leyen, the ECJ have final say. Let me hear Richie trying to say what he's got out of this deal.
Do you believe the Unionists will accept different treatment? And can you point to how, for instance, the European Court of Justice will have jurisdiction in Northern Ireland?
The agreements that we've reached today, there is further democratic accountability.
So he's talking about further democratic accountability, where Ursula von der Leyen says, well, the ECJ has final say. They're the final arbiter. They are the only arbiter. They are the only court in the EU single market. And he's saying that we've got what? Let's just put that back up again and just listen to him. What did he say? Let's go for this yet again. It's pitiful to listen to and to watch.
The Unionists will accept different treatment. And can you point to how, for instance, the European Court of Justice will have jurisdiction in Northern Ireland?
The agreements that we've reached today, there is further democratic accountability of that role of EU law.
Further democratic accountability on the role of EU law. That's the Stormont break. I'm going to say, give me a break. The Stormont break doesn't work. The Stormont break will never work. The bar is set too high. There's arbitration in between. If it doesn't go right, if the British government say Unionists, if they ever did manage to get 30 people together from within the Stormont Assembly, if they ever did manage to raise against EU laws that were coming against them, it is designed in such a way that it would be impossible to actually stop any of these EU laws, because remember what Ursula said, that the ECJ, the European Court of Justice, is the final arbiter on anything from within the EU single market. And make no mistake, under Windsor, you are in the EU single market. You are not in the UK internal market. Whenever they're talking about the best of both worlds, give me a break. That's what we need to say to them people. So anyway, so coming to the conclusion on the stream here, I'm coming to the conclusion. The conclusion, and we wanted to leave this to the last. Constitutional but not economic unionist Doug Beattie, which way is it that way? Jeffrey Donaldson. Are they different, or are they one and the same? Are they the same? When I examined their tests, whenever I seen that they were written to permit the circumstances in where that, let me see, can I get their test for 2 seconds here, so that I can prove to people, so that I can show to people. Here we go. So that very heading, any new, quote unquote, new arrangements must, any new arrangements, but not the old arrangements, not the protocol arrangements, not the fact that there's a border in the Irish Sea, not the fact that Northern Ireland is separated from England, Scotland and Wales in Northern Ireland, not the fact that the people's democracy was denied here. It's not the case whereby that the protocol must go and the democratic right of the people must be fully restored, is what he said, or should be fully restored. So any new arrangements must fulfill Article 6 of the Act of the Union, and I've went a long way to say to people, fulfill. Why wasn't that written in? Any new arrangements must fully restore the Act of the Union, which provides for your rights in the United Kingdom, which puts you back on an equal footing with people in England, Scotland and Wales. That is the only thing that is needed from within those tests. All the rest are written for furniture, for show, to make it look as if the DUP are doing something when they're actually doing nothing. Avoid any diversion of trade. A Greenland would avoid any diversion, because the trucks can go straight down that channel, free flow. But yet there's an EU customs and regulatory border. There's digital data being supplied to the EU. In fact, it is an EU customs regulatory border designed to keep goods from England, Scotland and Wales out of the EU single market. And that has been, actually, it has been fought out and agreed by a court here in Northern Ireland that the frontier of the EU is now at Belfast, Larne and at Warrenpoint. So you see how the DUP's tests were written. They were written, any new arrangements must not constitute a border in the Irish Sea. So the argument would be that the Green Lane doesn't constitute a border. That's what they're going to argue. We give the people of Northern Ireland a say in making the laws which govern them. The Strongman Break does not give the people a say in the laws that govern them, resulting in no checks on goods going from NI to GB or GB to NI. Well, the Green Lane is a EU customs and regulatory border where there's digital data being given to the EU, where there's trusted trader scheme involved, in where the hauliers need to be certified to put their goods into that trusted trader scheme. And then there has to be declarations beyond that. So look, that is not satisfied. To ensure that no new, there's that word new again, new, take that word out and that means something different. Ensure no new regulatory borders develop. What about ensure no regulatory borders develop or exist between Northern Ireland and the rest of the UK? You see how these people wrote those tests? They wrote those tests to accept. And this is what the British government were saying. They were saying that the Windsor Framework satisfies the DUP-7 tests. The DUP-7 test was written in constructive ambiguity. They were written with compromise in mind. We know the man that wrote them, Richard Bulick, you call this guy. He wrote those tests. And we've asked him the question, who instructed you to write them in that way? Well, we know who instructed him. He's a constitutional but not economic unionist. Read Jeffrey. I believe that that man there, yeah, director for the Centre for Democracy and Peace Building, I believe that constitutional but not economic unionist, I believe that, well, is Jeffrey one of those people also that has developed the Doug Beattie syndrome, in where that he's now not even a constitutional unionist, even though that he says he is, that, well, as the Irish government would have said, that they were aiming to divide constitutional and non-constitutional unionism. I happen to know that Jeffrey would be very friendly with the likes of Leo Varadkar. He would have good relations with people in Dublin who are currently setting up a full infrastructure to, I'm going to say, to absorb us, that have been less than friendly with us ever since the Brexit campaign and the Brexit had come into place, that had fought tooth and nail to separate us from the rest of the United Kingdom. Jeffrey, I believe, is the same as Doug Beattie. There's no difference. There's absolutely no difference. We know where they're going. We know what they've told people, what they're going to do. We know that they're setting out and aiming to swindle the electorate coming up to the council elections. The real question is this, people. Are you going to be fooled? So we're going to cut these up into little clips. We're going to do what we do. We're going to pop them out, and we're going to try to win the hearts and minds. And I'm going to ask anyone that if you can help with their work, well, please do. I have to say that the Facebook channels have been decimated in terms of the numbers, and that was, I mean, that's the reason why that they put us off Facebook in the first place. I mean, 10,000 odd people in the Facebook channels and very, very little people watching on Restore UK. Maybe it is that it's not shared out. I don't know, but anyway, we'll have to work in those numbers, people. And what I'm going to say to you is that, well, until the next time, do not trust the DUP, and I mean that with a passion. Do not trust them. We need to hold them to account. We need to insist that, well, see, if we don't turn this around, if we don't turn them against this agreement, if we do not insist that we form part of the electorate that elected you, and you need to stay to that strongman, you need not to give up the only leverage that you have right now for turning this around, Sir Jeffrey Donaldson. You need to do the right thing. You need to stand by your electoral promises on the protocol rally stages. You see, that's what we need to insist upon this DUP. And if you do not, we need to make Jeffrey Donaldson a thing of the past within Northern Ireland Unionism. Thanks very much for listening, and we'll see you all again the next time.
Look, if we have passport controls in Liverpool, does that matter to me? Absolutely not. The things that matter to me are so much more important than this silly debate about whether we'll have the odd border post or passport checks.
You know, the greatest challenge that we face is bringing our own people with us, making peace with your friends.
Any man who is not with us is against us. When is a unionist not a unionist? When he creates disunion.
Well, in the end, customs checks doesn't mean that you change the constitutional status of a part of the United Kingdom.
This is the most momentous election that we have ever had to face. We must elect those who would fight for the union, not those who would oppose it.
Already we're seeing the political parties and business leaders coming together to see how we actually exploit the opportunities that may arise from this situation.
Any man who is not with us is against us.
And when it comes to peace building, sometimes leaders have to push the boundaries to see how we actually exploit the opportunities that may arise from this situation.
Any man who is not with us is against us.
The Northern Ireland Assembly is the place where every element of our society is represented. Such partnership is how we must move forward.
And when it comes to peace building, sometimes leaders have to push the boundaries.
When is a unionist not a unionist? When he creates disunion.
The sheet of paper you were given didn't show you all these different regulations on them, so it didn't even mention how many regulations there were. And when I queried that, I asked one of the DUP spads because I knew it had something to do with it, and I was given this assurance that it was keeping us in line with the rest of the United Kingdom, and there was absolutely nothing to worry about.
And when it comes to peace building, sometimes leaders have to push the boundaries.
I trusted what I was told, and I made a mistake, and that's how it was sold to me, and I can only apologise.
The Northern Ireland Assembly is the place where every element of our society is represented.
And when it comes to peace building, sometimes leaders have to push the boundaries.
In August 2016, within weeks of the EU referendum, my party leader, Arlene Foster, penned a letter jointly with the then Deputy First Minister, Martin McGuinness. That letter was written to the UK Prime Minister, Theresa May. And it's worth quoting, I think, from this letter. This region is unique in that it is the only part of the UK which has a land border with an EU member state. There have been difficult issues relating to the border throughout our history and the peace process. We therefore appreciate your stated determination that the border will not become an impediment to the movement of people, goods and services.
Any man who is not with us is against us.
It was pragmatic and constructive. As then First Minister and Deputy First Minister, these two leaders were writing in the same spirit of mutual respect and common sense, which enabled my party and Sinn Féin to to reach agreement at St Andrews and subsequently to establish a power-sharing government.
We must elect those who will fight for the Union, not those who would oppose it.
And therefore, making peace with your enemies is important, but it can only be successful if you make peace with your friends. Thank you.